Welcome to DIY Easy Crafts and BergKnifeMaking.com. Today we're going to take a look at how to convert existing logos into small silhouettes or stencils suitable to cut out on a Cameo Silhouette craft vinyl cutting machine. Now I have quite a few subscribers that asked how I cut out my stencils, and most of these guys are knife makers and they want to make a small stencil out of their existing logo that they can use as a maker's mark on the knives that they create. So Wolf Creek Forge contacted me and they asked me how to convert their existing logo, and that's basically what I'm going to do here. I imported it into the Cameo Silhouette software program. It comes with the machine, and then just using the erase tool, I'm going to get rid of some of the text and some of the small details that just would not be possible when you reduce the size of this logo. This is going to go down, to the 1/2 inch to 1 inch range. And at that point, all of these small details just exceed the capability of the machine to cut it out. So I'm just going to carefully use this erase tool, get rid of all the fine detail that I can. You could zoom in on it, make the erase process a little bit easier. And you end up with a nice black logo that in the Silhouette program you want to trace. I'm going up into the upper right, you see the trace bar, and then you just increase until it's solid yellow, and then you trace it, but you want to trace with that top trace bar, which allows you to trace inside and outside. So now you've got the cut lines. These red lines are what the Cameo Silhouette machine would actually cut out. Many of these details are still too fine, especially for a small stencil. So we're going to ungroup first, and then we're going to release from compound path. Releasing from the compound path allows you to have access to each one of these segments individually, whether it be the individual letters inside the logo, etc. Now I can highlight these lines and you can edit the points. So you're on the upper left, there's a thing that says edit points, so that you can make each one of these details a little bit wider. Now, depending on what the size of your end logo is going to be, a lot of times it's trial and error. You may have to make them as wide as you think that would be necessary, and then actually, have the machine cut it out and see whether you could weed out that detail or whether it's going to show up on the final logo. A lot of times you might want to get rid of some of these details or make them just wider, especially these small lines. Now, after you do it a few times, you'll kind of get used to what thickness the machine will actually print out. It's not set in stone. It depends on the blade that you have in your machine. It depends on the type of vinyl that you're using. But the thicker you can make these lines while still having the logo look good, the better off that you are. So I'm just going to grab each one of those points under Edit Points and just make some of those lines a little bit thicker. I can grab or highlight the entire object now and group all of the components together so they will move as one. I copied and pasted, so I duplicated the logo. And that's good to know, because when you're finally finished, instead of just printing out one, you can print out a bunch. Now, the original logo that he had also had text, which I used the erase tool to get rid of. I just want to demonstrate how you would put text in using the Cameo Silhouette program. I'm going to make a circle just because his text was wrapped in an arc. I'm going to get rid of this circle later on after I place my text. I'm just going to kind of use it as a guide for now. And then the neat thing about these little how-to videos is you can go back and you can stop it, you can rewind it, you can see exactly what buttons I pressed, etc. So now I'm going to go to the letter tool. I'm going to type the text that I want. Right, you can, over in the upper right, you can pick what font you want. You can just scroll down. If you highlight the text as you scroll down and pick different fonts, you can see what they actually look like. And I'm trying to find one that's going to be, nice and bold, stand out really well. And then you can reduce this in size just by grabbing the upper corner. And I'm going to bring it up close to position. That little green dot allows me to pivot it. And then I'm going to go back up and I'm going to release from compound path. So that's going to break up each individual letter. So I'm going to ungroup and release from compound path. I can then position each letter and I can pivot each letter with that little green dot and put them exactly where I want them. And I'll do that for each letter. Now you could have actually typed the entire text, and had it wrap around the path or the arc. I just find I have a little bit more control doing it individually. Now what I did right there is when I released from compound path, I actually separated the inside of the O from the outside of the O. So now I've done all of the letters in the exact same way. I'm just going to show that by highlighting them all, and I can just use the shift key and click on each letter individually so that they're all connected. And I could actually just group them at this point, but I can just grab them now. I can use that little green dot and pivot them as a group, position them exactly where I want. And then I'm going to show you one more little trick to make these letters a little bit easier to print out or to cut out. A lot of times when you're working with very small text, it's really hard to keep like the inside of the R and the inside even of the O intact. It has a tendency of falling out of place. So what I like to do is make stencils out of them. So you connect the inside of the O to the background. So I'm going to highlight all of these, put them into position. I'm going to zoom in now. I'm going to take a look at making stencils. So I'm just going to use the cut tool, which is on the left-hand side. I made this a compound path again, the two components of the O, and then just using the cut tool, I can cut straight across and straight across, or you can go directly, across the entire letter. I'll show you again for the R. So I'm going to highlight the R, make a compound path, which basically just connects that inside of the R to the outside of the R. And I'm just going to use the cut tool to make that into a stencil. And that makes a huge difference when you end up weeding out this stencil. It will really help those small components to stay where they're supposed to. And by doing this, I'm able to get lettering, to cut out lettering down to about 1/4 inch in height. Anything smaller than that, you really have to work at. But down to about a 1/4 inch, I've been very successful. I've done a lot of electro etching. You can also use the same type of self-adhesive vinyl stencils for chemical etching. Now, the inside of his logo, the anvil, has some lines. I have to make those a little bit thicker. I'm going to just go in and grab them. Don't forget, I released this area from Compound Path. I can highlight it. I can edit those points and make each one of those lines a little bit thicker. So I've modified the logo on the right. The logo on the left, I haven't. So I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm going to duplicate the one on the right, highlight everything, copy, paste, move it over, and then I'm just going to go in and pick each one of the letters and erase them. So I'm going to end up with a version of the logo that has no lettering and a version of the logo that has lettering. And my friend can then, depending on what size he wants to print these out, he can choose which one he wants. So I would imagine that if he wanted a logo very small as a maker's mark, maybe 1/2 inch tall, 1/2 inch wide, he would do it without the lettering. And if he was going to do a larger image, on a cleaver or a larger knife, he could use the entire name of the Wolf Creek Forge. Now, really, all I'm trying to do in this video is get people familiar with this Silhouette Cameo software because it doesn't come with any instructions when you buy the machine. So sometimes it's easy just to see how it's done. What I did there at the end was I just sent it to the Cameo. I picked the material, which was vinyl. The depth of the cut, I usually go at 2. The speed is around 5. And I use, but for the vinyl that I use, for the thickness, I use a 12 or a 13. And then the Cameo does its thing. It cuts out all of those details. You can then weed it out with a tweezer or a small, small razor knife. And then you can use these self-adhesive stencils in knife making, as like I said before, as a maker's mark. I use them for electro etching, 12 volt, 2 amps. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this short little video. If you did, I ask that you please give it a thumbs up. By all means, check us out on the web at www.bergknifemaking.com. And check out the how-to knife making book that Jason Northgard and I put out last year, Introduction to Knife Making, available on Amazon.com. Thank you.